Alright, so just recording a quick video here with an update on BAMU. So thanks everyone so far for the support. Migrated from the Let's Bonk launchpad, so that's really exciting. And for the next few weeks I'm going to be posting some videos about the build process and showing you what I'm working on. So in this video I'm just going to show you how I've got the system set up, and we'll go from there. So I might do some vibe coding sessions live on X as well as part of this process. So yeah, I've set it up on Cursor, so I'll just show you what I've done here so far to get things started. I've cloned the Eliza starter repo into this BAMU directory here, and I'm going to be using Cursor and Claude Code to build the project. So as you can see here, I've also already set up Claude Code, so all I had to do there was set up and log in to Claude, and that set up the Claude Code system on this BAMU project directory. What it also did is, as a first step, it analyzed the Eliza files here in this directory from the repo clone, and it created a claude.md file, which is this file here, with just a rundown and overview on what the Eliza repo is and how to use it. And this is what Claude Code will refer to as it's working on the project. So I will prompt it on what I want it to build, and it will use this claude.md file as a guide of what it needs to do and what instructions and guidelines it needs to follow to build the project. So as a first step, I copy and pasted this claude.md file which Claude Code created initially, and I published that into Claude, the Eliza Coding Assistant project that I built in Claude. And I just asked to analyze the claude.md file just to make sure that it had everything covered, and to see if maybe it could find some potential areas where it could improve the claude.md file. So it came back with some feedback, but it wasn't really necessary for the MVP process, so I've left it unchanged. But the one thing I have changed and asked Claude to help me map out was a process for instructing Claude on how to work, so a workflow guideline, as you can see here. The other thing is that I asked it to integrate using a to-do file, so this will allow me to prompt Claude Code on what to build, and then it will update that to-do file so that I can track its progress, I can see what it's working on, and I can make sure that it's ticking off the things it needs to. So approaching in that incremental kind of checklist style will allow me to go through and sort of review what it's been working on and just approve changes along the way, just to make sure everything's working and it's following the plan as it should. So you can see here, this is the workflow guidelines that it's mapped out. So a planning phase, always start by reading the to-do file to understand current progress, check development notes for context from previous sessions, review the technical implementation plan for overall architecture, create detailed implementation plan. As you can see, update the to-do planning. Then it's got an implementation phase where I've instructed it here to work incrementally. So I'm trying not to confuse it by overwhelming it with a lot of things it needs to build. So instructing it to work incrementally and check in with me along the way will help it just to stay focused and hopefully avoid spaghetti code. So if it's working on one thing at a time, we can check in and review and make sure everything's working. So we've also got session management, so it's a really detailed workflow here of how it should approach each session, and then a format for how to structure and update the to-do file. So I've incorporated that into the Claude Code setup file, which is this one here, claude.md, and then that's going to allow it to work to those specific guidelines every time I prompt it in the terminal here. So we've also got a Claude Code setup guide. So again, I prompted Claude to help me with a setup guide for Claude Code itself. So the purpose of this was just to make sure that we've got all bases covered and that we're starting from a really strong foundation. So you could just, integrate Claude Code and start prompting straight away. What I've chosen to do instead is sort of take a step back first and just really analyze how we've got everything set up, go thoroughly through the Claude MD file and any other files that's going to help Claude work more effectively, and implement that from the start so that we can get really good code from the very start and hopefully, you know, eliminate some back and forth and testing and errors that we might encounter later on, especially if we just started coding without any real thought behind the process and the technical plan. So as you can see here, Claude's helped me create this setup guide, so I've got very clear instructions now on how I need to set up Claude Code to work as effectively as possible. It's instructing me here on what folders I need to create, and this is specific to our MVP plan. If we can scroll down further, we can see all of this information. Add documentation files. So again, these are files that I asked Claude to create that are in addition to what the normal setup would be, just so that it has really clear guidelines and instructions to work to. So we've got a technical implementation plan. We'll add that to the docs in Cursor. So we'll create these folders in here and set up all of this information before we start coding. And that's going to give Claude Code all of that information to then create the modules that we need. So when I actually go to start building BAMU and working through this process, I'll record some videos of going through this document step by step and setting up Claude Code. I'll explain how I've prompted Claude to come up with this document and what the purpose of each of these implementation pieces is, but I'll just quickly scroll through here and you'll see it's also got a file organization structure to follow, so I can go through this and make sure that I've got everything set up correctly. I can probably even prompt Claude Code to actually do all of this for me, but we'll get to that when we start the implementation. The other document that I'll show you that I've created with Claude is the Speed MVP implementation plan. So what I've done here is obviously the vision for BAMU is to be able to provide an open source platform that you can use to set up your own wallet tracking system. So whatever your filters and you know, potential specific wallets are that you want to track, hopefully with this you'll be able to clone this repo and start your own system. So what I've done here is I've asked Claude to create an MVP plan so that we can ship a working product and then build on from that. So the initial MVP will be a pretty basic wallet tracker. You'll be able to set it up, specify what wallets you want to track, and you should be able to get alerts then on movements from those particular wallets. So you can see here that this MVP plan has the project structure, core implementation, specific details about each feature and each module, and all of the code already that we will need to use to build these modules. This will be used as sort of a guide for Claude Code. It's likely that Claude Code will probably produce different code to what's here. This is more of a high level overview that we can give to Claude Code to use as context, and then it will build out everything based on what we want to do here. So this is more so just to show you what we want to build and sort of a timeline of what we can do. Might take a bit longer than what's mapped out here in this plan, but just to give you an idea, it's broken things down into phases, so core service, alert system, BAMU production, open source prep, and then a launch phase. So again, it's going to be a pretty basic whale wallet tracker that we build as part of this MVP, but once we do finish this process, we can then start to build out more features on top of that. So that's a little look at where we're at the moment with BAMU. As I said, I'll be publishing more videos on both X and YouTube and posting regular updates to let you know how we're going with the project. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Thanks.